So you were acquainted with the deceased Kay Connell?
Yes, I was.
In what regard are you her familiar?
How did you know her, Finch?
She was an avid reader of my detective novels.
And when did you meet her for the first time?
About a year ago, she came to one of my signings here in Maine. She hung around afterwards and we chatted about my writing and how she wanted to write. And then we started talking and she asked if she could visit me and talk about books and things like that.
And she did?
Yeah, we became very close. She got comfortable enough to show me some of her own writing.
What does she write?
Poetry, actually.
Any good?
No, not really.
You tell her that?
Why would I?
So, exactly what was the nature of your relationship to this girl, Finch?
So someone she could talk to, someone outside of her everyday life. I think that's why she needed me. Why she probably approached me.
Why'd she need you for that?
Well, her boyfriend, Randy.
Randy's dead.
He's a little prick. He hit her.
We know all this already, Finch.
No, it's getting worse.
So?
No, but it was a lot worse, really.
Why all this eagerness to talk about Randy's stats, Finch?
Oh, you're right. I'm sorry, Detective. That's probably all hearsay anyway, and I don't want to say anything that could be taken the wrong way.
Excuse me, Mr. Finch, anything you say to us at this stage is in strict confidence. Secondly, we're not a bunch of hotheads who are just gonna draw a bunch of crazy conclusions, okay?
Okay.
Please, continue.
There was one more thing, it doesn't mean very much, but I think that Kay was getting scared. Probably myself to blame for that.
Why is that?
Randy knew who I was, not who I was, but knew that she had a friend, someone she could confide in, and that made him furious. She was always writing about how scared she was, and her letters were getting more and more desperate.
Are you still have any of these letters, by any chance?
You know, I probably do. Do you think it might help?
They might. Okay. Anything else?
A modern day remake of Matthew Vaughn's Layer Kick. A Coen brothers end up with Timothy Chalamet. A Citizen Kane prequel, a Midnight Cowboy sequel. Alvin and the Chipmunks deserve another squeakquel. There's so many new ways to revisit Sideways, but a graphic novel is how we choose to update. But we still hold fast, you can't change the past on the Ruined Childhoods podcast.
Of all the letters in the English language, only one bears the distinction of having homophones that span multiple parts of speech. The letter I, aside from its state as a noun in terms of its definition as a letter, is also a first-person singular pronoun. If spelled A-Y-E, it's an affirmative expression commonly used by legislators and pirates. And spelled E-Y-E, it can be two things, a growth on a potato or the wet organ in your face that grants most of us the ability to see. But the eye, as many know, isn't unique to humans. In fact, different animals have different types of eyes. Goat eyes have horizontal pupils that grant them a wide field of vision. Giant clams have hundreds of pinhole-sized eyes, which help prevent it from predator attacks. But while the common caterpillar only has 12 eyes, some say that they can see certain colors using their skin. Caterpillars, a symbol of transformation, are often seen in popular culture. The most famous would be Alice in Wonderland's Absalom, who loved puffin' on that hookah. Of course, we're all very familiar with Eric Carle's Very Hungry Caterpillar. And there are also several mentions of caterpillars in William Shakespeare's circa 1595 history play, Richard II. In Act 2, Scene 3, Richard's cousin Bolingbroke compares the king's advisors to the larval butterfly insects while speaking with his uncle Edmund of Langley. "An offer, uncle, that we will accept, but we must win your grace to go with us to Bristow Castle, which they say is held by Bushy, Bagot, and their complices, the caterpillars of the Commonwealth, which I have sworn to weed and pluck away." In Act 3, Scene 4, the gardener's assistant uses the metaphor of caterpillars to describe the political state of the land. "Why should we, in the compass of a pail, keep law and form in due proportion, showing us in a model in our firm estate, when our sea-walled garden, the whole land, is full of weeds, her fairest flowers choked up, her fruit trees all unpruned, her hedges ruined, her knots disordered, and her wholesome herbs swarming with caterpillars." But of the immortal bard's history plays, Richard II was not nearly as popular as some others. In fact, it's actually a prequel to circa 1593's more popular history play, Richard III. the earliest known performance of which occurred in November of 1633, when Charles I and Queen Henrietta Maria watched it on the Queen's birthday. It gained prominence on screen in 1955 with a performance by Laurence Olivier. 40 years later, Sir Ian McKellen would don the King's crown in a film opposite Annette Bening, Jim Broadbent, and Home for the Holidays Robert Downey Jr., both of which were released in 1995. And in 2011, the role of Richard III will be played by a down-on-his-luck Al Pacino, a play within the film Jack and Jill, which is considered by the Golden Raspberry Awards to be a prequel, remake, ripoff, or sequel of Ed Wood's Glen or Glenda, which we can all agree is a stretch. But Pacino is no stranger to acting in a remake. Scarface is an updated take on the 1932 Howard Hawks film by the same name. Michael Mann's Heat is technically a remake of his own film, L.A. Takedown. And in 2002, Pacino would star as a homicide detective sent to a small remote town to investigate the murder of a teenage girl during a time when the sun is out all day and all night. Greetings, Starfighters. This is Ruined Childhoods, and on this episode we celebrate the 2002 Christopher Nolan film Insomnia and the 1997 Scandinavian original, both about a detective who could use a little bit of shut-eye. Dan, how you sleeping these days?
Much better than Detective Will Dormer or his
Will Dormer
Swedish counterpart.
or what's the
counterpart?
Yeah, I was going to say Jonas Engström.
Yes, oh, yeah, of course.
Jonas.
Yes, but of course, I also live in the Pacific Northwest in November, so darkness is not a problem.
Correct. That is very true. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's 5 o'clock. It is pitch black out. I don't need to like duct tape the curtains or anything. So yeah, we're all good.
Dan, I had seen the 2002 Insomnia back when, it was on video for a little while. I didn't see it in the theaters, and I don't remember it having too much of an impression on me. And I'm really glad to have had the opportunity to watch it again, and then to watch the 97 original. And, it's Stellan Skarsgård in the Al Pacino role, or vice versa, because that one came first. I feel like we're going to be kind of talking about them both concurrently, and it's almost like they exist at the same time and in the same place in a way.
Yeah, it was the remake came 5 years after the original, and, it's an English language adaptation, and we'll get into, like you said, we'll be talking about them back and forth. So we'll of course get into to what how much of it is like Nolan kind of recreating the original versus Nolan putting his own spin on it. And what's interesting, so I remember seeing this in the theater. I remember seeing this at the Rialto Theater in Westfield, New Jersey.
Okay.
I had seen Memento in the theater twice and was really, and was really impressed with Christopher Nolan. And
you were an early
still
adopter of the whole Nolan thing.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. No, I remember Memento had a lot of word of mouth, and also that came out in 2000, was it 2001 or 2000?
That was 2000.
So I was eating up anything that was independent, cool, interesting cinema. I was going to see things in New York City, though that was actually my second time seeing Memento was at the Angelica Film Center in a packed theater.
Cool.
I actually think the first time I saw Memento was at the Lowe's New Brunswick Route 1, as referenced previously as being on the site of the old dirt mall from Mallrats. So I digress. I saw Insomnia in the theater in 2002 because it was this hotshot new director doing his first studio film with 3 Academy Award winners.
Yeah.
Al Pacino, Robin Williams, and Hilary Swank.
Sure.
It was the year of Robin Williams going. It was like Robin Williams went bad that year,
That
and it
1 hour
started.
photo.
Well, yeah, Death to Smoochie to a lesser extent.
Yeah.
But he's definitely, at least for a good part of that film, the antagonist of the film.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's
Yeah.
but that one is most certainly a comedy, as
Right.
dark as
1
it
hour
may be.
and 1 hour photo. It's hard to say between Insomnia and 1 hour photo, which is kind of the furthest from.
Oh, I would say 1 hour photo.
Probably 1 hour photo. Yeah.
Furthest from
yeah.
Doubtfire, furthest from Flubber. Is that where we're going?
Furthest from Flubber. Yeah. So
On a scale
I saw
on a scale from Flubber to 1 hour photo, where does this one land on the Robin Williams scale?
right. Yeah. Exactly. It's like Good Morning Vietnam, the dead center of that.
Yeah, I'd say so. I think that one leans a little bit more
Fisher
1
King.
hour photo. Fisher King leans more 1 hour photo, just because it's not for children. I'm thinking like,
Well, okay. Well,
Or-
yeah. Nor is Good Morning Vietnam, but yeah.
right. So they sway more on the 1 hour photo side, but not nearly as far in that direction. I'd say it's like a 55%.
This is a really interesting project that I'd like to come back to with you, John. The Williams.
I'd love
scale.
to. I'd love to do, but the thing is, like, I feel like 1 hour photo and Insomnia are so heavily weighted in comparison to all of his other roles, as dark as they may be. They don't come close to 1 hour photo or
These are the
Insomnia.
two, right? These are the two where he's a criminal.
Sure, he's a criminal in Death to Smoochie also, but in a different way.
Yeah.
He does crimes.
Yeah, but he does crime, but not to this extent.
I mean, Shakes the Clown. I'm trying to think of exactly the extent of his craziness
I forgot
when he appears.
He was in that.
Yeah.
Anyway,
an early Bobcat Goldthwait collaboration.
Right. Oh yeah. I mean, I haven't seen it in forever, but yeah. Anyway, we will get back the William. We can do a special episode on the Williams scale, but Insomnia definitely falls on the more dramatic side for him, and the definitely far from Flubber.
Yes,
we are certainly far from Flubber.
Yeah.
It's a wonder. And so anyway, I think where we tangented off from was, I remember seeing it in the theater, and it was, I was really taken by it. I just felt like visually it was awesome. And it was like, wow, okay, this is really like, oh, this is what this guy can do when you give him a budget. And I loved Pacino's performance in it, which I think I definitely lean more towards Pacino's understated performances. And this certainly had enough of a mix. And it really...
Yeah.
What's that?
There was nuance.
Right. Yeah, there's nuance. And also watching his progression over the course of the film was really interesting. And I mean, Williams, it was great. And it was really, at that time, it was really refreshing to see him doing something different.
Yeah.
Even, beyond Good Will Hunting. So,
well, and speaking of Good Will Hunting, I kind of wondered if when he was filming Good Will Hunting, if he was just chatting with Stellan Skarsgård, and he's like, "Oh, so what have you been up to?" And he's like, "Well, I just made this movie, really interesting thing." And I do wonder if there's a little bit of like Robin Williams became interested and kind of, I wonder if he did seek out playing that role in the remake.
That's a good question, and I didn't see anything about that in any.
Well, I mean, we don't know what happens in people's private conversations, but I just like to imagine.
This is Hollywood, of course we do.
Well, but it's
although
like,
maybe not in 2002.
But it seems completely possible that in 96 or 97, whenever they were filming Good Will Hunting, that such a conversation would come up. I mean, they shared a bunch of scenes together. And, that's what was going on for Stellan Skarsgård at the time. And I love that he was, doing films in, was that a Swedish production? Or was that
Norwegian,
Denmark, Finland,
I believe.
Norway?
I believe it is Norwegian.
Let me pull up the Wikipedia for that to see exactly. Oh, country Norway. There you go. Languages Norwegian, Swedish. So Norway is the country on record. But so it's like, yeah, I'm doing this one movie in Norway, but I'm also doing this other one in the States, and they're both these kind of like independent, dramas. One being a thriller, and I really did appreciate the similarities and the differences between both productions. And I feel like I want to say more, but I kind of want to synopsize first, if you don't mind.
Okay.
Does that sound good to you?
Absolutely. I'd be more than happy to. Would you like me to synopsize?
Please.
So we'll begin with the 1997, the OG. Here we go. 2 homicide detectives are sent to northern Norway to investigate the mysterious murder of a teenage girl. Detective Jonas Engström leads the investigation as he also witnesses the deteriorating memory of his partner, Erik Vick. During their investigation along a rocky shoreline, they have a suspect in pursuit, but Engström mistakenly shoots and kills Vick, who wasn't supposed to be in that particular area. In a panic, Engström tells the investigators that Vick was shot by the perp. As it turns out, the only witness was mystery writer John Holt, the very much guilty aforementioned perp, whom blackmails Engström by threatening to reveal the truth about Vick unless Engström frames the victim's boyfriend for her murder. Engström, having been unable to sleep for days, must keep his head together in a part of the world as mysterious as the days are long. And as previously mentioned, Stellan Skarsgård plays Jonas Engström there in that version. Now in 2002, Los Angeles homicide detectives Will Dormer and Hap Eckhart are brought to remote Alaska to investigate the murder of a teenage girl, but their investigation is overshadowed by Hap's plan to sell Dormer out to Internal Affairs, which would overturn dozens of convictions, setting murderers free to roam the streets. While on a stakeout to catch their perp, a foot chase through the craggy Alaskan shores results in a shootout, leading to Dormer's accidental killing of Hap, who believes it was intentional. Knowing what would happen if he told the truth, Dormer says that Hap was killed by the suspect in an investigation led by local detective and Dormer stan Ellie Burr. Dormer's investigation leads him to local author Walter Finch, the writer of the victim's favorite mystery novels. This suspicion is confirmed when Finch calls Dormer's hotel room to commiserate about the region's 24/7 daylight schedule that lasts during that particular season, as well as share that he knows the truth about Hap's death, information that he chooses to use to his advantage so his name could be cleared. As time goes on and Dormer loses more and more sleep, his alliance with Finch grows more and more complicated, and his conscience balances on a razor's edge. So yes, 1997, Stellan Skarsgård, directed by Erik Skjoldbjærg. In the 2002 version, we've got Robin Williams as Walter Finch, Al Pacino as Will Dormer, Martin Donovan as Hap Eckhart, Hilary Swank as Ellie. Ellie
Burr, the appropriately named for Alaska.
Ellie. Oh my! Wow!
Burr.
Wow! Good call, John. Yes, and Maura Tierney as the innkeeper who has her own past and her own history, and she. She and Dormer develop a kind of, relationship.
Yeah, and in the original, there's a relationship, like a bond that forms between Engstrom and the innkeeper, but that becomes complicated in its own way, and I don't feel like we get the same, camaraderie, but there's there's definitely a familiarity at the beginning. She's very comfortable with him, but then he gets weird.
Are you're talking about the 97 version?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah. And her name is Rachel Clement, by the way, in the 2002 version. We also have Jonathan Jackson as Randy Stetz, the boyfriend, prime suspect, who Finch would very much like to see convicted.
We've got Paul Dooley. Alaskan police chief or whatever his position is.
Chief Nyback, who he used to work in L.A. with Hap and Dormer. Right. And another familiar name and face, Nikki Katt as Detective Fred Duggar, one of the cops up there. So and this important screenplay. The screenplay was adapted from the original by Hilary Seitz, and I think this is one of those remakes that, and I had never seen the 97 original, and I was really really impressed by it and thought it was great, and could understand instantly watching it what Christopher Nolan saw in it.
Yeah, well, it was funny because when I was watching the 97 Insomnia, I was looking at it and I was like, wow, the power that Seven had on cinema, and it was at 95, 96, and it was just
95,
like there was
95,
and there was just like a string of movies that were just so clearly influenced, those kind of thrillers, those cop thrillers, that kind of came in its wake, where they're really pushing boundaries and showing kind of like the grungier side of, I don't know, the inner workings of the police force. And also just the visual style, I felt reminded me a lot of Seven. And I don't know, there must have been an influence there.
Seven, but I would also say, like, credit where credit is due, Silence of the Lambs.
Sure, but it felt very Finchery. Do you think so?
Yeah.
There was like a lot of like very washed out visuals.
Especially when you're getting the sense, and this is something that's consistent in the original and the remake, but the sense of the detective's perspective, whether it's Dormer or Jonas, it's the when you get that, like, they're kind of like dazed, the camera's trying to duplicate how they are seeing things, and especially when they are seeing things, they're the vision of their dead partner sitting in the room with them, which, if I remember correctly, is also in both.
It's in both,
something that's carried over. There's a lot. What I really like about this as a remake is it really does carry over all of the best ingredients from the original.
The best
and then
ingredients
adds.
Yeah, the things that it adds, I thought were excellent adds. Nothing
Added complexity.
Added complexity. The whole internal affairs thing, I felt, was a really great justification for the complex murder of Hap. Because, there's the whole, like, when he shoots him, Hap thinks, you did this on purpose because I was going to expose, like, make you vulnerable to an investigation from internal affairs.
Well, right. And then what I love is that they keep going back to, like, you get in Dormer's head where he's questioning, he's like, did I do it intentionally? And it is such, what I'm so impressed with just about that aspect is how much it adds to and it's such a little touch. It's such a small addition. It's not like taking up a whole lot of extra time in the story.
No, not at all.
But man, it adds so much to your vision of Dormer as a cop, and you're kind of starting to think like, okay, I'm trained to like root for this guy. This is my protagonist, but do I really like this guy? And that is something that also, they do in the original in other ways is where you really do question, the integrity and, morality and whether, how much of a hero is he and how much is he of an anti-hero is he?
Yeah, for sure. I think that in, the Al Pacino version, the thing that I really like about the internal affairs investigation is that it's not that he did anything that was like really like disgustingly wrong. When you hear about a lot of like internal affairs investigations, you find out like, ooh, that's some real shady business that went on. Like, planting evidence for, just to put somebody away or something. But what he did, and I'm not going to give away exactly what he did, but like he kind of does things that are on the edge of what is legal in order to keep people safe and to, put away actual bad people. And the fact that internal affairs is this like thing that's kind of this cloud that's following him, and that is possibly going to be made worse by Hap, who's going to be cutting a deal with internal affairs for like leniency, just to kind of it basically what's happening is the person who's running internal affairs is going on a big mission to like clean things up, and it's a political move to become district attorney, and it's always a political thing. And so this is really frightening, because if Dormer is put into question and is guilty of an internal affairs thing that would typically be not something that would be looked at, but if for this person to be seeing it would be exposing something, it could really, could put a lot of bad people in the streets. And one of the moments that I really liked, and it's such a great Pacino moment, is when basically what happens, and this happens in the Norwegian version also, but there's a backpack that's found. The victim's backpack is found by some like kids who find it like by a shed. And so what they decide to do, or what Engstrom / Dormer decides to do, is to plant it back in the spot and announce on the news that they are looking for the backpack that the girl was last seen with that night, and kind of stake out the area where they know that it was found so that they could catch the person who did it to go and get it. And for Dormer, it's not really a legal thing to do. And he's questioning if what he told them to do, if they should actually do it. And that's when Hap is just like, what's the worst that could happen, or whatever. And he looks at him and he's just like, what do you think? Like, I forget what the exact line is, but the way that he looks at Hap in that moment is like, hello? Internal Affairs is like got a microscope on us, and they're, picking apart everything that we do. So got to be really careful. And it's those little moments where you realize like this is a vulnerable person who can't just, do the things that they instinctually need to do in order to catch the actual bad guy. But yeah, I really like that. Another thing that I really liked about the 2002 version is the foot chase that Dormer has with
the logs.
Yeah, where he's chasing him across these like logs that are floating. So good.
And this is one of those sequences, just to kind of take you back to what I remember thinking when I first saw this movie, or I guess maybe in the aftermath of seeing this movie, because I forget if it was before this movie came out or after, that there were talks when they were talking about, okay, who's going to, take on the Batman franchise. Who's going to reboot the Batman franchise? And I remember like they were talking about Darren Aronofsky, who was going to do like a Batman Year One. And I was kind of psyched about that because I was like, okay, I'd like to see this guy like, mess around with Batman.
And Nolan, I feel like have very similar like DNA, especially in their early careers.
Well, right. And their first, like, Aronofsky with Pi
and
like, kind of, hit.
Yeah.
But then, Requiem for a Dream was also in 2000.
Yeah.
So, right. And there were a couple of other directors in the mix. But I remember seeing this and then hearing that and thinking, yeah, I could see that working. I could see Nolan Batman working. And sure enough, I think Batman Begins is an excellent film.
I think it's fantastic.
With, all three of those, but Batman Begins especially, was so impressive. But you could see that in sequences like this log chase, and he's just Nolan is awesome. He's a great director, but his set pieces are really. Inception is basically just a collection of set pieces. I love that Inception is basically a bunch of action sequences that he wanted to make.
Yeah,
he's like, I want to do like a James Bond style snowmobile thing. Right.
Yeah.
No,
totally.
Anyway, but what he does, I love what he does with Insomnia. And it's kind of like we do think of Christopher Nolan now as everything being, this IMAX and huge and like high concept and everything. And this definitely has high concept, the 24-hour sunlight cycle. And
which by the way, it's awesome that it works just as well in Norway as it does in Alaska. That's just kind of like, look, we don't have very many other places where this can take place. So here we go.
Nope. I have a list.
Okay.
Yeah. Anyway, it was really that was really impressive. The adjustment of having the cop, the quote unquote female cop in the 97 version is kind of she's kind of on par with them. She's not quite as young.
Right.
And she knows them. There's there's a familiarity there in that relationship. Whereas with Ellie, she has studied Dormer's cases.
She did her thesis on one of his cases. And that's how she knew information that would come up later.
Well, which again
everything is justified, and it's done in such a way that you don't realize that it's being done for a reason.
And it adds to it. It adds to it in such a wonderful way that it doesn't overload you. You're still following the story. I mean, the plot itself is pretty. It's cat and mouse. So adding these little complexities just make this movie so much more fun. And you have those questions of oh man, what are you going to do? And there's the moments that are so good and I don't want to really talk about in case people haven't seen it or haven't seen it in a long time and are going to rewatch it. But little moments that they do that are so great. And you just are like, oh, what's going to happen next? And the suspense is built really well. That's the thing, is that this movie works in a way where it would work just as well without stars.
Yeah.
And without the big set pieces, not that anything was really that overly elaborate or expensive.
No.
In this. But Nolan could have made this as an independent film and it would have been as good. Or could have been as good.
Yeah, and Stellan Skarsgård, it's not like he's huge mega celebrity. He's not like Al Pacino level.
Right.
Right. For 1997, he was, just working actor.
That was a big year for him, though, because he had Good Will Hunting, he had this, and then Breaking the Waves, I think, also.
Oh, yeah, Breaking the Waves.
I don't remember if that might have been 96, but still, all around the same year, right? He was in Breaking the Waves, which, I mean, such a gut punch of a film.
Yeah, I haven't seen that one in a while. Let me see. That was 96. So yeah, and then 97, Insomnia, My Son the Fanatic, Good Will Hunting, and Amistad.
Oh, was he in Amistad? Okay.
Yeah, and then 98, Savior and Ronin.
Right.
So De Niro and Ronin.
Ronin's awesome.
Deep Blue Sea in 99.
That's right. Yeah, Deep Blue Sea. And one of the many great films of 1999. Yeah.
For sure. We all love it. We all love Deep Blue Sea.
But yeah, I mean,
I think that I totally agree. I think that Nolan could have done this with, half the budget, and half that budget would mean just the actors' salaries probably. And and it would have been totally good. But you do get a lot with Al Pacino. And for me, I am very hit or miss with Al Pacino, or he's hit or miss with me, I should say. I'm not always a huge fan. I mean, I love like Dog Day Afternoon, and I'm actually a big Cruisin' fan. I know that not a lot of people love that movie, but I think that he's great in it. And I think that the only other time we talked about it might have been the Scarface episode. I don't know if he's come up on any other episodes of the show.
Not that I can think of. Though I have been listening to his memoir, is the audio, which is him,
right,
talking.
I've heard him do interviews promoting it.
It is so good to listen to. And I'm sure it's great to read, and I don't know if like it's word for word exactly the same, or if he takes any liberties. It certainly sounds like he does, but it's so interesting because you definitely get a better sense of this guy and more about like what made him do this, what kind of drove him to make the choices that he did.
Yeah.
Like, why did he stop making movies for 4 years?
Right.
What was the deal with, what did he think about cruising? He has not at the point where I am, I think he probably would have mentioned it by now, does not talk about Insomnia, which is disappointing, but he just kind of talks about like a string of films. Oh, I think he talks about he talks about his string of films in the 90s, and then in the 2000s,
he's done so many movies. It's like you can't talk about every single one.
Well, no, yeah. But it's really interesting because like just the stories he tells and the way he tells them, there's so much fun. And watching this movie while I'm in the process of going through that audiobook, it just gave so much more, because I felt like I looked at that guy and I'm like, I feel like I know what he's drawing from now, and like in this scene. And
you know what, Dan? I happen to be on Al Pacino's Wikipedia page, and I just scrolled past one little segment that I was unaware of this, and I can't believe it considering all the research I did for my intro. But in 1996, and I'm quoting Wikipedia here, Pacino starred in his theatrical docudrama Looking for Richard, a performance of selected scenes of William Shakespeare's Richard III and a broader examination of Shakespeare's continuing role and relevance in popular culture. So I didn't realize that, and it makes sense that he would do that. And
I at one point thought that was where you were going in the introduction, because I listened.
Dan, you didn't think I was going to
today.
You didn't think I was going to Jack and Jill, because I've done it the past 3 episodes.
Well, no, I mean, I realized it was too soon in the intro for it to be, coming to its crescendo. But I just because I was listening to him talk about Looking for Richard and how he spent time, he started shooting it while they were shooting Carlito's Way.
Oh, okay.
And then just kept like, there were like a bunch of movies that he just kind of like made with his own money because he wanted to
Really?
make them. Yeah. I mean, he also talks about, and I think this, will perhaps come up on another episode. And I know it's come out in some of the excerpts that have been printed from the book, but he also had no idea how to handle his money and really trusted his accountant. Like at one point when he was getting screwed over by his accountant, he was dating Diane. He was actually with Diane Keaton in the late 80s. Like when she made Baby Boom, they were together.
Oh, I didn't realize that. Interesting.
Yeah, he talks about it briefly.
Don't tell Sam Shepard.
Yeah, no, or Harold Ramis.
Or Harold Ramis. Harold Ramis wouldn't care.
No. So, he just talks about it in that, like, she was really happy with with the work she was doing, and that she was making like hit after hit, and he was like, she went off and made Baby Boom. That was a huge hit. It was. He definitely he at some points just starts singing things.
Oh my God.
And that was a mistake.
Well, I don't know if I've talked about this on the podcast before, but one of my favorite Al Pacino moments in history was, and it's not the fact that he has a Shrek iPhone case, which is true, and it's a thing that's real. But in about 2008, 2009, maybe 2010, this is when I was living in Los Angeles, and I was in a Target, and it was particularly empty for like the West Hollywood Target. Must have just been like a real weird hour or something. And there was a guy who was in there who was acting really, I don't know, unpredictable. And he was making some people pretty nervous. And this one guy, was making a point to like flag down some employees at Target, maybe one of the security guards, to try to like do something about this guy. And the person who did that was, very disheveled looking himself and wearing a, like loose black sweats and a black leather jacket. It was Al Pacino, and he was there to save the day. And it was one of those moments where I was just like, that's Al Pacino. And he's just in a Target, like helping out some woman who's being harassed by like some dude. So good for Al Pacino. I witnessed an act of heroicism. So there you have it.
That's really interesting. That's really funny. He has not mentioned that in the book, though. That's about the place where I am.
And there was this guy looking at me.
I didn't know what to do with myself in Los Angeles, so I went to Target to go shopping. Yeah. Oh, he talks about where he got that from. Yeah.
Oh, where did he get it from?
Yeah. Well, when he was,
Spoilers
preparing for Scent of Woman. Oh, yeah. There's so much in that book. There's a great story about Diane Keaton with his accountant.
Hoo-ah.
Yeah. So, Hua, the guy who taught him how to basically assemble and disassemble the pistol blindfolded.
Right.
And, he was this guy who was a Marine, and after like Al Pacino did it well and was able to do it with his eye closed, and I was like, oh, you're going to do all right. Hua. And Pacino goes, what was that you just said? Like, what was that? Where did you get that? And he was just like, oh, that's just a Marine thing. Like when they do something, when you're training cadets and they do something well, you say, hoo-ah.
I didn't know that. That's really cool. Hey, does it talk about The Devil's Advocate? Another 97 movie?
No, I think he mentions it.
I love The Devil's Advocate.
He references it as just in like, he's like, I did The Devil's Advocate. He talks a little bit more about about Donnie Brasco.
Sure, yeah.
He talks a little bit more about that. He talks a little bit more about Dick Tracy. He doesn't go into great depth.
Dick Tracy.
But
we did Dick Tracy. So we talked about Pacino
that's right.
And Dick Tracy.
Yes. Yeah.
Long time ago.
Right, yeah. But of course, he talks a lot more about Scarface.
Sure. Yeah.
He talks a little bit more about cruising.
Sure.
He talks a little, he of course talks a lot about The Godfather he talks more about Dog Day Afternoon. We find out where the whole Attica comes from.
Serpico, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, well, no, in Dog Day Afternoon was Attica.
Wasn't that Serpico?
No, Dog Day Afternoon, because he's outside the bank and he gets the crowd worked up, and he just goes, "Remember Attica?" Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
He does talk a lot about Serpico. So it was, I mean, yeah, like I don't need to.
His Attica moment in Dog Day Afternoon is the Rodney King moment in Airheads.
Right. Yes, exactly. Very much so. Very much so. Yeah. So, I mean, yeah. I mean, he doesn't, I would have loved to have heard him talk about filming Insomnia, working with Robin Williams, among others.
Well, so, the scene, I guess scenes, but I'm thinking of like the scene that he has with Robin Williams where they're on the ferry and the two of them are just having this conversation, and Robin Williams is, he's blackmailing him into, getting the scent off of, him for Finch is his character's name for being under suspicion. And, the way that they're having this conversation reminded me a little bit of Pacino and De Niro in Heat at the diner. And it's kind of just like the good guy and the bad guy. And, they are in a position where nothing's going to happen. But they're having this, I mean, in Heat, it's a more powerful moment, but I really liked the way that Pacino played this scene, because it's like there was so much weight to it. Whereas in the 97 version, when Engstrom is having the conversation with Holt, the writer in that one, because there isn't the internal affairs investigation and we aren't really clear on the reason why he didn't come forward and say, he got caught in crossfire because I was fired at and this guy got shot in the leg and saw a shadowy figure with a gun and took a shot. Well, and
on top of that, it was very specific. He did tell Vic to go, like they set that up because you have like Vic's kind of declining mental state. Sure. But like he does tell Vic, he's like, okay, go down to the water and then turn left.
Yeah.
And even like, and I watched that sequence a couple of times to be like, okay, like, can you tell? And it's like, no, yeah, he went to the water and went right.
Right. And he says, you said go right. And when he's like dying. And and it's almost like is he not saying the truth because he wants to preserve the like legacy of this great cop, his partner, and not have to tell people like he made a mistake? Like and then it just got too deep.
It feels like it's actually like less like premeditated. It feels like it's more just like I don't want to admit that I shot my partner.
Right. Yeah, I know.
Like maybe so it's more about his own legacy.
Yeah,
I don't know.
The American version, it just like it carries more weight to it because there's this real thing that's going on that has implications beyond Dormer. And that's what I really appreciate about the way that things turn out with Hilary Swank's character, who is investigating. She has to do all of like the documentation on the death of Hap. So the way that turns out is pretty great. And I'm not going to talk about the ending because it's so cool. And I feel like this is a movie that probably people who haven't seen it need to go see it, because especially if you're a Christopher Nolan fan and your knowledge of him starts at Batman Begins, or even if you do go back to Memento, this might have been one that you skipped because it's, I don't know, I feel like it's not talked about that much.
Well, it was right now. It was released in May 2002. while Spider-Man and Star Wars Episode 2 Attack of the Clones were in the theaters, and despite, the quality of Attack of the Clones, it was still hugely popular. So
Totally, yeah.
Unless you were just like going to movies in your spare time, you might not have prioritized Insomnia.
Right, that's true, but I feel like there are also movies that don't have that have like a huge box office draw that still get talked about years later. And it's like, I don't know if Insomnia at the time was even talked about at the time by like, movie fans as being something that you need to go check out.
It wasn't.
Yeah, exactly.
It wasn't unless you were like a into Memento, and you were like, I want to see what this guy does next.
If you were a fan of Memento in the time, like you weren't like a latter day Memento fan. So I don't want to forget to mention this because it was similar to a topic we were talking about, but like another thing that I really liked about the 2002 version that's different from the 97 version. And maybe I like it better because I saw the 2002 version first and then watched the 97 version. But I feel like, so just to clarify, Finch is in the American version, the Robin Williams character, the author, the bad guy. In the 97 version, Holt is the author, the bad guy. I feel like their apartments, I thought that Finch's felt a lot more appropriate. It's got clutter. It's filled with books. It's, there's so much stuff everywhere. Whereas in Holt's apartment, it's very bare.
Yeah.
Very white, which is also very Scandinavian, but like there's nothing there. There's just one room that happens to have like notes taped to the wall for a book or something.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
It definitely said, well, a lot of the set decoration in the 2002 version is great from like Randy's little apartment, and all of the sequences where he's hiding the gun.
Yes.
Like those are those are such great sequences. The sequence in Randy's apartment is so great, and I love one of the things I think I like about Pacino, and I think I like Pacino best in the roles where he's like he is just like one step ahead of whatever is after him, and he doesn't know what to do next, and he has to act because there's no time to not act. I like that more, panicked.
Sure. Yeah.
Pacino. Yeah.
Yeah. It's nice. When we meet him, it's just like, oh, this guy is in control. But when you see that he's losing control of the situation and he doesn't fly off the handle in a way that you would expect an Al Pacino character to fly off the handle, and he's understanding that his lack of sleep and the fact that, yes, he's one step ahead, except Finch is always one step ahead of him. And the communication between the two of them is, he's reminded of this, and it's just like, oh my God, all of the tricks that I have, this guy he knows all about them. And that's the benefit of the character being a mystery writer, is that they have to think that like that. And it just makes sense. Whereas if it was, Joe Schmo, fixing a roof somewhere, it doesn't have the same impact, but the fact that it's a mystery writer makes so much more sense.
Oh, absolutely.
Anyway.
Yeah.
I'm glad that we talked about this one. And when it comes to Christopher Nolan single word movie titles that begin with I, it's in my top 3, I gotta say.
I have to say it might be my number 1.
Well, it's so different from the others. There's a lot that I really do like about Interstellar, but I feel like Interstellar also has some moments in it where it's just like, okay, that's all right, fine. Whereas this one, it's just like you're kind of at the edge of your seat the whole time.
Yeah. I mean, Interstellar for me was a movie that the first time I saw it, I was kind of let down by it, and I liked it better watching it a few years later. But it was one where I felt that like, okay, this is Nolan's getting a little.
Oh, like, I liked it.
Yeah, no. It's not, and it's not like that's the thing. It's not a bad movie. It's not like it's impressive in so many ways. I think with Interstellar, it was just that the story that they set up at the beginning of the film was like, oh, I want to see the prequel to Interstellar. But that's not for this episode.
Well, I have a feeling that we're living the prequel to Interstellar.
Oh, yeah, fuck. So, pardon. Yeah. So, but yeah, no, I'm glad this one has been. This is one I've wanted to talk about for quite some time.
Yeah,
and just because it's one that I like to revisit every now and again. It is one of my favorite Pacino performances, definitely, from that era, and certainly a lot of great ones to pick from, both high profile and not high profile.
Okay.
Including Looking for Richard.
Looking for Richard, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, you're talking about revisiting it. I mean, clearly the 2002 is a remake of the 97. Also in 2002, there was a novelization made from the screenplay of the American version. We don't talk about novelizations all that much, but I feel like that's a whole other world.
That was my favorite genre of book when I was a kid. I used to love
you had a lot of those.
I would get the novelization before the movie would come out, and it would just get me more hyped for the movie. I remember I had the novelization of Batman.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite novel? Is the Batman one your favorite novelization?
Ooh, do I have to think, like, my favorite novelization, I kind of got rid of my novelization collection, but I remember I had Willow. Willow was a good one.
Yeah.
The Batman novelization was really good.
I'm sad that you got rid of those, because what a fun collection that would be to like really just have so many movie novelizations. It's a way to have a nice big fat bookshelf while still being a complete dork.
Well, it was how I rewatched the movies.
Sure. Yeah. In a way that mom and dad would allow.
Right, of course. Yes, from cover to cover. I'm really trying to remember some of the other adaptations or novelizations that I had. I might have had Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade.
Okay.
and then there were the Scholastic versions, which that's a whole other genre. Yeah. Like I had Ghostbusters, or I had the Indiana Jones and Temple of Doom with a cassette tape and a book that I
remember that one.
You read along with. Yeah. So I had some like Empire Strikes Back as well. Yeah, but novelizations. Anyhow, I never read the novelization for Insomnia.
No, and I was just looking through the author, Robert T. Westbrook, who did this novelization, and he also did The Mexican from the Julia Roberts Brad Pitt movie. The Final Cut, the Robin Williams Mira Sorvino psychological thriller from 2004. So I wonder where that one would would fall on the Flubber to 1 hour photo scale. I don't remember that one.
Not having ever seen it, I feel like it kind of falls as like a sub bullet point under 1 hour photo. It was like there's 1 hour photo, and then there was everything that was kind of trying to repeat 1 hour photo. Like I think he did one called like The Night Listener or something.
Oh, I remember that. Yeah.
I don't think these had theatrical runs.
So this was The Final Cut with Jim Caviezel, Mira Sorvino. Let's see. This one I mean, it had a theatrical release. It made 3.6 million in the box office, which is pretty sad. But
I mean, unfortunately, Robin Williams' like film career,
yeah,
it wasn't going, wasn't going. He wasn't making hits.
No.
In the late, like he had the series of movies like the RV, and he do one with John Travolta, another like Disney thing. He had a bunch of those, and then he did like World's Greatest Dad.
Oh yeah, once he started to get really interesting. Yeah,
I feel like he had a couple of those movies too, but it also now the more I learn about like why actors make certain choices, I'm just like, he had kids to support, he had bills to pay. Yeah, like I think we think that you make a hit movie or two and you're made for life. You're not.
No, absolutely, yeah.
Regardless of how badly your accountant mismanages your finances.
Yeah,
like you need to work.
Oh, yeah, he did. Let's see. 2007 was Licensed to Wed and August Rush. 2006 was The Night Listener, RV, Everyone's Hero, Man of the Year, Happy Feet, and Night at the Museum. It was a very busy year. 2005,
Man of the Year was good.
Big White Aristocrats. Let's see. 2009, World's Greatest Dad, Shrink, Night at the Museum, Battle of the Smithsonian, Old Dogs. 2014, Boulevard, Angriest Man in Brooklyn, Merry Friggin' Christmas, Night at the Museum, Secret of the Tomb. Yeah, he just packed them in, but they weren't these big ones. But I would say that 2002 was 1 Hour Photo, Death to Smoochie, and Insomnia. And I mean, what a great, trio.
Yeah.
Powerful performances.
And we've now talked about 2 out of 3 of them.
Yeah, we sure have.
When we do our season where we just do numbers. We'll just do a season where we just do movies that start with numbers.
Yeah. Well, Dan, anyway.
1 Hour Photo, 2 Days in the Valley. We already did Three Amigos.
We already did 2 Days of the Condor. Anyway, but
yeah,
this is a podcast where we talk
Three
about
Ninjas.
how we would bring back movies these days. And this one was its own, 97, 2002, there's the novelization. Dan, what would you do with Insomnia?
I think I would adapt it into a series.
Okay.
Well, and I don't know that I would necessarily adapt the same story. Mm-hmm. I don't know that there's a need to do another remake. The thing that really works about one of the things that I really like about Nolan's, as I said earlier, was that it does take the elements of the 1997 version that really work, and it kind of does recreate them. The shootout in the fog, for example.
Oh yeah.
But it's also, I think that having a murder mystery in this type of setting that is both like remote and dark in a lot of ways, except for the literal way, and like I was thinking it would make an interesting season of True Detective.
Okay, well, Dan, did you see the last season of True Detective?
I didn't, so...
Okay, Dan, it's The Night Country. It's set in Alaska, where it's a period of time where it's dark 24/7.
Oh, well, yeah, okay. Maybe I should have done some research on that.
It was a very good season. Jodie Foster is great in it. Really great cast, actually.
No. I definitely want to go back and check it out. Now, the other idea I had would be like maybe setting a series in a place where you have these periods of 24-hour light, but it's a comedy. And I'm not saying that it is a comedy about a murder mystery. It could definitely be a comedy involving a police department, But I feel like a comedy where you have some, fish out of water comedy where somebody
Herring
comes
out of water.
from a what?
Herring out of water.
A herring, if you will. Yes. And
Or what's the one in Alaska? Halibut is the Alaska one?
Oh, yeah. Halibut's the halibut fishing capital of the world. That's right.
Right.
Yes. So, maybe it is, and maybe it is a cop, and maybe it would be a fun kind of dramedy, perhaps. It doesn't need to be specific to comedy, but but also not like a Twin Peaks, or don't make it Twin Peaks, don't make it Northern Exposure, but kind of like its own thing, and just like the comedic side of what happens when you can't sleep and when the sun's out all day, or all night. So I don't know, maybe go that direction, since it sounds like the concept has been done recently with the whole serious murder mystery concept. Oh, and where I thought, so as I mentioned earlier, I have a list of places where it could take place, but and I don't know if I'm pronouncing this right, but Nunavut, Canada is the northernmost permanently inhabited place in the world.
Oh, okay.
Where they have 24-hour periods of sunlight. And I feel like that sounds like the perfect setting for a comedy, because we know murder doesn't happen in Canada. So yeah, no, of course not. So it would be interesting to see, of course there has to be a sheriff's department, or whatever you're doing. Somebody comes from, from wherever they're moving from, and they're coming up to work in this place, and they can't get used to this, and it's like, 3 o'clock, where is everybody? Shouldn't all the schools be getting out? Wait, what do you mean it's 3 a.m.?
Right. I loved that moment in the 2002 Insomnia, where he's like, all right, well, I want to go to the school. I want to pull the kid out of the classroom. And he's like, all right, let's go. And they're just like, well, it's 10 o'clock. And he's like, yeah, let's go. And he's like, no, 10 p.m. And he's like, oh.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I thought that was an awesome moment.
That was a great moment.
I think that, a series, the northernmost point in Canada, that's really fun, or inhabited place in Canada. That would be cool. I like that.
Anyway, so there we go. That's my pivot there. So what's your plan?
I would love to see a movie that it's not a remake, and it's not a sequel, but takes place in the same universe, focusing on Hilary Swank's character. She was fantastic. She is a relatively small role in this movie. I mean, an important one. But she is somebody who has a very important part in the film, which is very closely connected to the ending of it. And I'd love to see kind of like how that colors her career. And as somebody who, when we see her, 22, 23 years in the past, is just getting started, where is she all these years later? And how has this experience early in her career impacted who she is as a cop now, or detective, whatever you want to call it. But
she could be chief of police.
She could be chief, but that's where my head is at. And Hilary Swank rules, and this was a role that I really loved seeing her in. And I'd love to see more of perhaps Police Chief Burr.
I agree. I think it would be I think it would be really cool to revisit that character. Maybe she's still up there in Alaska. Maybe she's not. Maybe she's still a cop.
Right.
Maybe she's not. Just to catch up that character, and so much can happen in the years, and how it has this experience impacted her, but also like what other experiences has she had in the time. I'd be down for that.
Yeah. I can't remember. Is Nikki Cat still with us?
Oh
yeah, it looks like
I
it.
think so.
I just haven't seen him in anything in a long time, so I wasn't sure.
No,
we talked about him in our Time to Kill episode.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
But it looks like his last film was Behind the Candelabra in 2013. He was in The Dark Knight in 2008. So I guess he and Nolan had a good experience together. 2018, he was in a television show called Casual. Oh, I remember that show. Dramedy.
Okay.
But yeah, I'd also be curious. I don't know what's going on with him these days, but would be curious to see, what's happening with that character, or just Hilary Swank's character.
Yeah, I think I think you have a lot to build on just with that character alone, and you put it in this universe, and you don't necessarily need to know Insomnia to kind of get into it. You just kind of build a new story based around her character, and include some of that experience in her backstory. But we don't need to ever, we don't need to wait for the Al Pacino cameo. This is all about Ellie.
No, and Dan, before you start talking about Al Pacino cameos, I would like to remind everybody that we are currently in our year-long series where we go up and down the alphabet, 52 episodes, 26 letters, 2 times. We are currently on I for Insomnia. We got started with Anaconda, which is bookended by A's with another one in the middle. And then we went to Big Business, CC and Company, Donnie Darko. What was E?
Election,
of course. F was, my God, why am I spacing on that one?
Oh, F was...
F for fake.
Oh, F for fake. Yes.
F for fake. And then we had Glenn or Glenda. And then Home for the Holidays. Then here we are with I. Before we get to J, I want to thank everybody for listening and remind everybody to make sure to subscribe and check us out on YouTube. Follow us on there. And make sure to leave comments, rate and review the show on Apple Podcasts. Leave us comments and reviews and ratings and all that kind of stuff on Spotify. Dan, talk to me about the letter J.
All right, the letter J. J is for Jack and Jill.
It's happening.
11. It is happening. Yes, the aforementioned in the last couple of episodes.
The last 3 episodes.
Last 3 episodes, we have it will culminate in John and I both watching for the first time, I think, for both of us.
Nope.
No? Okay, first time for me. So
I'll tell you about it.
Jack and Jill, directed by Dennis Dugan, starring Adam Sandler, Katie Holmes, and Al Pacino.
Yes. Quite famously.
Yes, I have seen at least part of his work in this movie, and
yeah,
I'm excited.
Well,
to check
I will reserve my comments for the next episode. But as we mentioned on our last episode, on our Home for the Holidays episode, Jack and Jill is the highest grossing Thanksgiving movie of all time. I mean, Thanksgiving is the kind of the impetus for the movie to kind of get rolling. It goes well past Thanksgiving. It is not singularly a Thanksgiving movie, but it will be coming out the week of Thanksgiving, the day before Thanksgiving. And so how appropriate is it to talk about a double J movie that is also a Thanksgiving film? And I don't know, how am I going to do an intro that doesn't talk about Jack and Jill until it absolutely has to? I don't even know.
You know what's interesting, John, is it just occurred to me that in our J options, springing off from Insomnia, we could have also gone in a different direction. We decided to do Jack and Jill with Al Pacino, or we could have followed Robin Williams and just done Jack.
We could have done Jack, which also features a guy who I lived across the hall from my first year of college. Who was addicted to snorting Adderall. I had nothing else to say about that guy. He was not a nice dude.
I don't know. I guess that's, when you
he
work
played
with
Robin
Coppola.
Williams' best friend. That's it.
Did Coppola bring him back for Megalopolis?
That is a wonderful question. Yeah, I forgot that Coppola did Jack, huh?
Yeah, he sure did.
Weird.
Anywho, but no, we are going to watch Jack and Jill with the Sandman.
Yeah.
And Sonny Boy.
I am psyched. It's going to be different. And on that note, as you are traveling to the land where the sun stays up 24/7, I wish you a good journey.
Good journey.